people need to recognize a few things about the federal budget situation. Number one, we are never going to see another budget surplus again. Never.
Really? Ever?
Not in our lifetimes.
Okay.
Yeah, I plan on living to 105, like knock wood. Okay. I just turned 60, so I got 45 years left. I don't expect to see another budget surplus for the remainder of my days.
Bob, please, man, tell us who you are and what you do.
Okay, so Robert Stein, I'm the Deputy Chief Economist of First Trust Advisors. I've been with First Trust since late 2006. I do a lot of forecasting, a lot of number crunching, forecasting GDP, today's retail sales, industrial production, housing starts, employment, etc. And I also do a lot of public speaking. And when I do my public speaking, I'm focused on what's going on in the world, what I think is going on in the world over the next few years. I talk a lot about politics, as the political situation can affect the economy and can affect a lot of other things as well. But when I do that, I steer clear of talking to people about what I personally would want to see over the next few years. And I really just focus on what I think is going to happen. And sometimes I like what's going to happen, and sometimes I don't like what's going to happen. But the way I see it, it's kind of like playing poker, which I do from time to time, or probably too much if you ask my wife. And, you know, the hand is going to turn out the way the hand turns out. And you have to be numb to the variance and just accept what's going to happen and not get mad either way, not get too excited either way. And that's kind of the approach I take to politics. I try to focus on what I think is going to happen, what the odds are, whether it's, you know, in the last election cycle, favoring one candidate or another.
Well,
for
the last one, you predicted President Trump getting into office. You know, you're usually calling these things spot on. How are you going about finding all of these data points and all these metrics and keeping up with everything to where we can have such an accurate prediction like that? You know, when CNN is saying Kamala is going to be winning, and it's like, what, 72 days before the election was happening, they had her up by 2.5, 3 points, you know?
Yes. So, I mean, I was very accurate last year, and that's kind of a burden to some extent. I'm happy. I'd like to be more accurate rather than less accurate. But now I have a bunch of people out there who think I'm a genius, who think I'm always going to get it right. I'm some sort of oracle, and I'm not. I'm going to get it wrong sometimes. But what I try to focus on during the presidential race in particular was where are the polls today, like at each point during the race, what I think is going to happen between that day where I'm looking at the polling averages and election day. Like, is one candidate versus another going to gain or lose support during the remaining time? And generally speaking, in 2016 and 2020, Donald Trump had gained in public support between earlier in the year and election day. And he was only behind by a little bit. Even at her best, I think Harris was ahead by 2 or 3 percentage points in the polling average. There might have been individual polls where she was doing better, but only maybe 2 or 3 points or so in the polling average, even at her peak. Even at her peak, when she was just introduced to the American public as the new candidate, right, at her best, she was only ahead by a few points. And then I look at two other things. I look at what is the error in the polling averages. And I know there were all these smart people telling me, including the New York Times, telling me and everybody else across America that the polls were now fixed, that they made mistakes in 2016, they made bigger mistakes in 2020. But in 2024, they were going to be perfectly right and nail it on the head, and they weren't going to make any mistakes whatsoever. And I mean, it was a theory, but some people thought that was a done deal, and I never thought that. I thought when I looked around, I didn't see a reason to believe that somehow the pollsters were suddenly going to get it right. And then there was another thing going on, which is Trump's electoral college advantage relative to his popular vote advantage. And when I put all of that together, I from the very early part of the year, I said Trump has an edge. He has a small edge. And then I went from 55% Trump at the beginning of the year to 60 to 65% or so by election day. And I know the weekend before the election, there was a poll by an extremely highly rated and previously accurate pollster just on the state of Iowa. And everybody thought that Trump should win Iowa easily because it's his kind of people, rural America, lots of white working class voters. But this particular pollster, Ann Selzer, showed that not only was Trump not winning Iowa, but Harris was winning by a lot in Iowa. She was winning by almost 10 points in Iowa. And a lot of people took that to mean, well, maybe this poll is wrong, but this is some informational content. I took it completely the other way. The way I took it was that this poll cannot possibly be accurate.
Because who answers polls? Very low IQ people answer polls. I'm sorry. That's just like who picks up the phone call halfway through the day and it's like, hello, my name is Waheed. What can I do for you? Yeah, I'll spend 20 minutes with you. No, man, I got to go fill up gas, go pick up my kids. No, nobody's doing these polls correctly.
Exactly, Waheed. So the way I interpreted that poll was not that Harris was actually ahead, but that Trump's people had stopped answering polls. They'd stopped. Not just in Iowa, but probably in Michigan, Pennsylvania, and other similar states to Iowa. And if those people had stopped answering the polls in Iowa, that means he's doing even better than the polls were suggesting in other states. And so my interpretation of that poll was the diametrical opposite of the way most press, most media understood that poll. And so it's really a process of just thinking about all the data that's out there and interpreting the data in a way that makes coherent sense.
It's almost like an economist, political Sherlock Holmes. You're using laws of deductions to do this kind of work, because you have a journalism background. Back in the day, I worked for Fox, right? And so we would hire Nielsen and we'd pay them, all this money, 40, 50, 60, 70 million dollars. And you look at their sample pool and it's like 400 people. And you're like, how are you accurately predicting that for the entire sample of the United States population in all demographics, all socioeconomic backgrounds? And it's just like, there's no science. They will try to explain to you the science. They bring in the scientists for it. And you're like, I'm having a hard time believing the data that you're giving me because I can't validate it any other way, right? So it's just listen, it's got like trust the scientist on all of that, and I guess what do you call it? Common sense isn't so common nowadays, right?
Yes. Yeah, no, that's exactly right, Waheed.
Speaking of common sense not being so common, Middle East, it's kind of just we're in 2025, halfway through the year. I want to talk to you about Trump, the big, beautiful bill, and all that stuff. But I want to get your thoughts a little bit about what is going to be the impact to us here in the United States economically from the blowout of what now looks to be a world conflict rather than just like sporadic regional little scrimmages. You got a major power in Russia, in Ukraine, you got a Western proxy and an Eastern proxy behind it. You have the same kind of stuff that's been happening since the 60s during the Soviet Union in the Middle East, and the soft power exchange there. But now they're just full on, like no holding back. All the missiles are out, all the carriers are into the sea.
So I actually think we're getting very close to the point where the Islamic Republic of Iran is going to fall. I think the U.S. is calling for people to leave Tehran so that some other force can take control of the government, whether it's more of the military, a layer below the Islamic heads of Iran. So we'll see. But I think it's coming to a head in the next week. And we will know pretty soon what the fate of the Iranian government is. I'm not that worried about the overall impact on the United States. And this may seem odd, but here's the deal. 20, 30, 40 years ago, 50 years ago, the U.S. ran a very large energy trade deficit with the rest of the world, especially on petroleum. And so when energy prices went up, that was essentially a transfer of wealth from the U.S. to the rest of the world. when energy prices went down, like they did in the mid 1980s, that was a transfer from the rest of the world to the United States. But the United States does not anymore, and hasn't for several years, about a decade, run a large trade deficit with the rest of the world on energy products.
Yeah, I
And
mean,
so
we're a net exporter of energy, actually. You know, we really are insulated and isolated completely from the marketplace whims of the price on the barrel, really.
That's absolutely right, Waheed. And so when energy prices go up now, it's definitely good for the energy producing states in the United States, like Texas and North Dakota and states like that. And yes, it's bad for the coast if you live in California and New Jersey. However, on net, it's roughly equal. We end up neutral within the United States. It just reshuffles the states that are doing better and the states that are doing worse. So I'm actually not that worried about some sort of energy price spike, even if it happens, related to the conflict in the Middle East right now. And I think the conflict is coming to a head. I think that Trump gave the go-ahead. This is just my interpretation. I have no hard evidence here. My interpretation is that Trump gave the go-ahead to Israel when Netanyahu came over to the United States recently to attack Iran, to attack their nuclear facilities, attack their ability to project power around the world, and attack the power structure within Iran itself. So they're attacking those, but Trump didn't want to be involved at first. He basically said, yeah, you can go ahead and do it, but if things go sideways, I'm going to say you did it without our permission.
Right. Especially like 3 days before that, we were supposed to meet for a peace summit, and then all of a sudden you just hijacked that whole thing away from Oman and our hands in the United States. But now we're going to send everything over to help you. You're some
yeah. Exactly. So Trump wanted to have enough disassociation with what Israel is doing so that if things went sideways, it didn't go well, that he could say, you know what, they did this without our permission. We're going to have to bring them to heel and make sure they don't do this again. But things have gone so well for Israel so far that now Trump is saying, you know what, we really do have an opportunity to reverse what I believe to be Jimmy Carter's mistake from the late 1970s and letting the Islamic Republic form, especially after the taking of the hostages in late 1979.
And the CIA right before him for a coup changed. They're both just as bad.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, a lot of people don't realize that Iran had an elected government with Prime Minister Bani Sadr, and he was impeached and run out of the country by Khomeini and his Islamic faction or Islamist faction. And so it's a chance to reverse that mistake. We'll see what kind of government forms in Iran if that happens, and where they go forward from there. But traditionally speaking, Iran and Israel were before 1978 had friendly relations. Not always perfect, but
and for the better part of the 80s, they had a common enemy in Saddam Hussein, right? You had
yes.
So it was perfect for a little while there. It was kind of like marriage made in heaven. You stick on this side of the house, I stick on this side of the house. We just yell at each other every now and then. But right now, what's happening is extremely concerning because, for me personally, I did not expect that Iran would have that kind of capability as far as the accuracy of how they're targeting stuff, how they're able to penetrate through the Iron Dome. And I'm thinking about this a little bit, and this is going to sound extremely crass because people are dying, and these are innocent people on both sides, and nobody should ever talk about money and death in the same sentences. But there are companies that do create all these weapons. There is a lot of technology that is being implemented right now. The first shot that we took into Iran, that took the entire negotiating team that was supposed to be negotiating with the United States of America, that came through an AI technology, right? And how it all came through. So what does this war and all these drone wars and AI capabilities mean to our military industrial complex and companies here like Boeing and Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, and their stock? Do you see it going up? Do you see it going up for a long time? How would that work?
Well, that's a great question. I'm not a stock picker, but I can tell you that there's been a major revelation over the past 2 years of the Russia-Ukrainian conflict, which is that we're kind of going back to an old World War I style of warfare in the sense, not completely, but in the sense that back in World War I, it was very hard to take new territory. Things got bogged down. People would stay in trenches and just shoot at each other. And it became very difficult for one side or the other to win until the Axis powers in World War I between Germany and Austria-Hungary, they kind of overplayed their hand, and then the Allies were in a position where they were going to win, and Germany capitulated. But it was basically trench warfare for a prolonged period of time, very defensive. Well, what's going on now is each country, Russia and Ukraine, have the technology to destroy a lot of infrastructure on the other side. Russia could send their drones over. Ukraine can send their drones over or plant them inside the country like they did recently and destroy a lot of infrastructure and kill people and things like that. But they can't necessarily put boots on the ground on the other side. They've gotten bogged down. And I mean, as much pain that Israel is inflicting on Iran and vice versa, there aren't going to be any Iranians in Tel Aviv, and there aren't going to be any Israelis in Tehran. Okay, they're not putting boots on the ground, and so we're entering a period, it seems, where war is more defensive, but also cheaper. And the reason I mean it's cheaper is because the drones and the missiles don't cost as much as aircraft carriers or mass tank production. And aircraft carriers and tanks are becoming not obsolete in all areas, but partially obsolete in certain conflicts around the world. So, for example, if the United States were to put aircraft carriers in the sea around Taiwan to try to protect Taiwan, well, China would blow those aircraft carriers out of the water with hypersonic missiles.
And that's the only way China can reach us. It's with us close to their little borders, but not the other way here.
Correct.
Yeah, that's
correct. But in the meantime, Taiwan, and this is just over the past couple of years, Taiwan may find it easier to defend themselves with a combination of drone technology, including drones. A lot of people don't realize this. It's not just drones in the air, it's drones underwater. And you can put drones underwater that have the ability to transform into torpedoes and take out ships, including convoy ships and including other ships that are delivering troops, if China, mainland China, wants to put boots on the ground in Taiwan proper. And so, whereas 2 or 3 years ago, I thought the timeline for China trying to seize, not necessarily successful, but trying to seize Taiwan was moving up, that timeline. I now think it may be harder than it was even a decade ago for China to take Taiwan, because Taiwan has abilities through drone technology, both in the air and underwater, to protect itself in a way it could not have 2 or 3 years ago, before the Russia-Ukraine process started leading to the development of an improvement of all this technology. You look at the Russia-Ukraine conflict, a lot of it is drones and coders sitting in a room far away from the conflict. And whoever has the best drones and coders gets the upper hand in the conflict, at least temporarily, which is you're not running tanks over the border anymore.
No, it's wild. It's wild. We're in a sci-fi novel right now where the best coder is going to be the general of the army in 50 years. The person that knows how to AI prompt, right, is going to be the general.
Yes.
And, speaking of Taiwan, I met you at a conference earlier this year, and you and I discussed this a tiny bit, and I was in the audience participating. But, one of my worries about if, let's say, Taiwan gets taken over or just disruptions or whatever it is the transfer of technology, I guess, to the United States. We're kind of doing a little bit of onshoring right now. We're trying to back to onshore, very, very complicated and sophisticated technologies. But Apple, for example, tried a little bit with India, didn't work, had to go right back to China for their next phone. What is that world like here for us if supply chains are going to continue to get disrupted, if different regions of the world are going to be under all these political turmoils, and how much is your iPhone going to cost, in about a year? Is it going to be $3,000? Like what is the United States economy in a global not war, but World War III is going to be like,
Yeah. Well, I don't think we're going to see a $3,000 iPhone anytime soon, but I do think it's certainly a headwind for Apple and perhaps Samsung as well to deliver these items with declining costs, at least on a hedonic basis, when you adjust for all the improvements in the phone along the way. You probably won't see the deflation, the hedonic related deflation. Hedonics were, I hate to use jargon, Waheed, but hedonics is like, sure, like, um, a TV might cost more than it did 40 years ago, but with all the improvements to the TV compared to 40 years ago, like the quality of the picture, when you adjust for the quality of the picture, what somebody back then would have been willing to pay for the improved picture, maybe it doesn't cost more than 40 years ago for the TV. It's hedonics. It's like the product itself has improved. So I mean, I remember in college watching college basketball in 1985 in my college dorm apartment with my buddies, and we had a 19-inch color TV, and we thought we were the cat's meow. Oh, and like and you look back at the quality of that video, and it was horrible, horrible. Like it was not even close to like high def or nothing even close to it. But we thought it was fantastic because it was in color. It was 19 inches. So um, there have been improvements, and you have to adjust for those improvements when you're truly trying to measure inflation.
It's almost kind of like what Elon Musk is trying to prove with his SpaceX and the rockets and having them, be captured back from after launch and all that stuff. So having that cost to entry, or I guess exit of space, to deliver different payloads and materials, it's way cheaper now than, right, like 10, 15, 20, 30 years ago. And speaking of Elon Musk, and your predictions and all of that stuff of the incoming administration, how has it panned out for you so far? 6 months in, you got this big, beautiful bill. You got a little sweetheart breakup over there, which is freaking strange, right? And then you had Doge, that whole Doge saga. Like, what's your take on it? I'm super curious to know your take on it.
So to be honest, Wahid, I don't follow the drama and the scandals and the
They're fun.
personalities
They're
that
fun,
much.
man. They're fun. They
They are
make life
fun.
so much fun.
They are fun, but I just like there's so much going on there that I try to like at base I'm a macroeconomist, so I only try to pay attention to what's going on in Washington if I think the policy related to it is going to affect the macroeconomy. Um, and none of that Elon Musk intrigue really does. There were a lot of budget cuts related to Doge, but in the end, most of those budget cuts are coming from the agencies themselves. And by the way, Trump's budget request, or his appropriations request, if you will, for next fiscal year, substantially below the level of spending from the prior fiscal year, if you just narrowly focus in on social discretionary spending. Because the president, with the exception of these reconciliation bills, he cannot affect Medicare, he can't affect Medicaid, he can't affect net interest, can't affect Social Security. And defense is largely based on geopolitics. So, I mean, if you underspend on defense, you end up spending more. And if you overspend, then eventually some politician will realize that and reduce. But it's the social discretionary spending that presidents and Congresses really have more power over time. And he's asking for like a 30% plus cut. I don't think he'll get it, but I think a 20% plus cut in that kind of spending can come through later this year. That'll reduce the baseline for future years. So, other than that, I think a lot of the actions taken by Musk and Trump early on related to spending cutting USAID, the Agency for International Development, cutting the education department. It was about saving money, but it wasn't only about saving money. I think the bigger factor was breaking up what he perceived, he being Trump, to be the ecosystem of the political left in the United States, where you had a lot of people making tons of money at non-governmental organizations, passing money out to their friends, and then building political networks amongst themselves. And he wanted to break up those networks and make it harder for people to make money. That is also what I think is going on when he cuts federal spending going to universities. He perceives universities and colleges as his political enemy.
Yeah, they're like a festering crown of anti-ideology, teaching moments there.
Exactly. So they make money off of federal largesse to a great extent, federal grants. And so he's saying, you know what, if what you do is good, go out and get your money somewhere else. But we're not going to pay you. You're not going to use taxpayer dollars.
I know, honestly, I kind of agree with that. Because, I mean, you can't have the government subsidize you and then left and right, all you're doing is bringing in brand new students into the marketplace and into the workforce that are like completely, unprepared, anti-government, anti-our government, anti-our system.
Yeah.
Where's that going to lead long term,
Yeah, I mean, my personal view is that the student loan system should be changed. Right now, if somebody gets a federal loan of $10,000, they give that $10,000 to the college. Then the college couldn't care less about whether the student pays it back. What I would do, and this is not going to happen, but they're moving slightly in this direction with the budget bill, the big, beautiful bill, only slightly. But what I would do is say, okay, the college gets $5,000 up front. Out of that $10,000, they get $5,000. And then they get a 50% stake in whatever payments that student makes on the loan in the future. In other words, the college would then want to teach the student, would only accept students that they can increase in value, and would want the student to repay that loan. Because if the student doesn't repay the loan, not only is the government out $5,000, but the college is out $5,000 as well.
What a wild idea. What a wild idea, Bob. Accountability on both parties.
Exactly. So in terms of the overall, the big, beautiful bill, I'm not that hung up on the differences between the House and Senate bill right now. Generally speaking, out of the things that affect the macroeconomy, we'll see an extension of the tax cut originally enacted 8 years ago. That extension will probably go for 6, 7, or 8 years. We'll see an enhancement in the SALT deduction for state and local taxes paid. We'll see a little bit of tax relief for tips, but they have to be careful not to write too big of a loophole in the U.S. tax code. Trump also promised during the campaign last year to cut income taxes on Social Security benefits. That's not going to happen.
Man,
it's just not going to happen.
He made a lot of promises too. He also promised to abolish the IRS. Do you think that's going to happen? He promised to go audit Fort Knox. Do you think that's going to happen? And why not? By the way, where is the gold in Fort Knox? I know I sound silly right now asking you this. It's a very pop culture thing. But like, why would the president of the United States, with all the problems that's going on, hyperinflation, I don't care if economists are calling it not hyperinflation. It's you print trillions of dollars and dump it into anything in a year or two right away. You're going to have hyperinflation. It's just the way it's going to work, right? But why would a president, someone especially like him, do you get what I'm saying, who's very... in a way, I think he's smart. I think he's very calculated. I think he surrounds himself with very calculated people. Why would that be communicated publicly? Why would they say? Why would they make that thing a thing? You know?
To be honest, I have no idea. You'd have to ask them. Like, the public relations is not my forte. So we're not going to eliminate the IRS. That's simply not going to happen. If a politician comes to you and says, my plan would eliminate the IRS. Usually it's a sales tax person. He wants to do a national sales tax. Well, who's going to audit the businesses to make sure they're paying? It's just ridiculous. It's never going to happen. We're never going to abandon the income tax system and go to a national sales tax. It's tilting at windmills. Never going to happen. Yeah. So Yeah.
It'd be a nice
So
thought, though. It's kind of like a nice thought, with every conspiracy uncle, or grandpa is like, the
yeah.
IRS. They're just everybody wants to see them go, but not at the moment. Speaking of the bill and all that stuff, you projected last year that we were going to have a 1.6 or 1.8 running deficit this year. Is that still around? Or am I correct with your projection from last year about what we're going to have?
I don't remember projecting the deficit itself. Um, and the reason is because they're all like for a particular year. And the reason is because there are all these calendar effects that sometimes influence the official number. And I don't follow that closely, but the deficit should come in somewhere this year in the vicinity of $1.9 trillion, give or take $100 billion. I don't think I forecasted it last year at all. I think I projected what it would be for this past fiscal year, which ended up being 1.8 trillion. But you have to adjust it for these calendar effects. Like if the last day of the year is on a weekend, then payments that could otherwise be made in the next fiscal year are made in the current fiscal year. And that sometimes adjusts how big the deficit looks from year to year. So generally speaking, here's the bad news. Our deficit is way too big still. Okay. Even to make the long-term budget situation sustainable, I think we can sustain $1.6 trillion deficits as far as the eye can see. Because even though that sounds like a massive amount of money, and it is, in that scenario, GDP is growing faster than our debt. And so the debt to GDP ratio is gradually declining. However, we're still running a deficit higher than that. So we need to make some adjustments, particularly on the spending side, to bring those deficits down.
Yeah, I mean, because people eventually will stop buying our debt, right? I mean, we're a debt-based economy. We are the that for the world. But my thing is like, how is it going to stay sustainable? I'll give you a perfect example. Driving to the studio here, I stopped to get some gas. There was a homeless guy outside. I felt a little bad, so I got him a few snacks, some water, whatever. Walked outside, wanted to give him the bag. He refused it. He said, can I wash your car or just, clean? He wanted to earn a living, right? But now you have AI coming in and there is going to be job replacement. You and I are very aware of that. It could be 10 years, it could be 20, it could be 30, it doesn't matter. The time value there doesn't matter. Inevitably, it will come to where it can take over construction. It can take over these lower kind of, middle class paying jobs. Where is it going to go? How are we going to maintain our middle class over the next 2-3 decades here?
Yeah, what I think is going to happen is we're going to find out that AI, much like the computer, is a little bit more of a complement to labor rather than only a substitute for labor. Most fears around AI are that it will be a substitute for labor. So if you have AI, you don't need to hire as many people to do X, Y, and Z. And that will certainly be true in certain environments, including for computer programmers. Absolutely. Can't deny that at all. But I think in many areas, it will also be a complement for labor. It will be a complement for labor in the same sense that, say, a worker with a computer could be more productive than a worker with a typewriter, right? And so that could actually boost the demand for labor.
Increase the productivity.
Exactly. So yes, it will eliminate some jobs, but net, it won't necessarily reduce the total number of jobs. The other thing to recognize is that in many cases, it's going to reduce the pay of people who are currently highly paid, or at least highly educated. And that might mean the people who cannot be substituted for easily, the people who mow lawns for a living, the people who clean homes for a living, the people who do manual labor for a living that can't easily be substituted for by AI or robots. In that case, they might earn more relative to everybody else. Not more in an absolute sense, but in a relative sense. It might help compress the distribution of income a little bit, kind of like we had from 1925 to 1965. The last time it happened, it was because we substantially reduced the foreign-born share of the population in the U.S. In the mid-1920s, it was 15%, roughly where it is today. By the mid-1960s, it was only 5%. And because of that, you had a lot of middle-class income growth. And people on the lower side of the income spectrum can make more money because there weren't as many poor people coming into the country. And so the demand for their services went up. So I'm not sold on the idea that, and I'm skeptical of the idea that AI is going to cause some sort of bout of mass unemployment.
Look, I like your version of reality better. I hope that is the case. You know what I'm saying? I like it better because what you're saying here, you're saying there actually could be a growth period for the middle class. If you are in the physical labor, we know how to do stuff economy, right? Yeah. Rather than just being a lawyer or a coder or any of these things that AI can ultimately do a lot better.
Absolutely. Where it will reduce is kind of I'm trying to be diplomatic here. People who are not particularly bright, but go to college and get a liberal arts degree in something that nobody really needs.
Right.
Those folks are going to be worse off because they think they're too good to do manual labor, right?
Yeah.
And so they're going to earn a lot less because that's the kind of job that I think can be easily substituted for by artificial intelligence.
Yeah, even when they do go learn manual labor, it's like pottery. All right, great. I got a robot that can do pottery way faster than you. You just spent $250,000 getting a pottery degree. Yeah. That's
yes,
wild.
Yes, exactly.
That is wild. I mean, I never imagined that we will be living in the world we're in right now, but, hopefully something comes, universal basic income gets touted a lot. I think it's a bad idea. I don't see how it's going to work. You're removing any kind of incentive from the essence of a human. And so ultimately, I guess it's just we take it day by day and kind of pray that the United States continue leading the world economically.
Yeah, I mean, I think the universal basic income is a horrible idea. In part, it's because I see the people they seem to be professional protesters. One day it's, ICE, the other day it's some other issue, the next day it's some other issue. Those people are professional protesters. Are you telling me they're going to get the universal basic income? They're going to make our lives even worse. I mean, they're just going to have nothing.
They're getting it now, and look what they're doing. I mean, in a way, they're being subsidized to go for 8 hours on the street. And so, it's just anarchy.
But at least somebody has to pay them. If they're getting it for free, that's going to be even worse. All those like Antifa type people with their masks and their clubs, they're going to get paid by the government to do nothing. I mean, that would be ridiculous.
I could not disagree with anything you just said right there. I am 100% on point with it. Bob, have we covered everything you want to cover? Do you have anything you want to talk about?
So here's the deal. The most underrated thing, and I mentioned it earlier, that's going on with the federal budget process is that Trump's budget request for next year, the next fiscal year, is coming in substantially below what Congress has traditionally spent on these programs adjusted for inflation. So there's going to be a massive budget fight after the big, beautiful bill gets passed. And I think Trump is going to win most of what he wants. There's going to be a big cut in social discretionary spending. Second thing, people need to recognize a few things about the federal budget situation. Number one, we are never going to see another budget surplus again. Never.
Really? Ever?
Not in our lifetimes.
Okay.
Yeah, I plan on living to 105, like knock wood. Okay. I just turned 60, so I got 45 years left. I don't expect to see another budget surplus for the remainder of my days. The good part is that we don't need a budget surplus to make our budget situation sustainable. Now, sustainable doesn't mean good, but sustainable can be an improvement over what we currently have. So if, as I mentioned earlier, if the GDP of the U.S. goes up 4% per year, like half inflation, half real growth, 4% per year, that means our debt can grow 4% per year. And 4% of $37 trillion, that's our debt, is roughly $1.5 trillion. So we can run annual deficits of around $1.5 trillion or so. And we can get there with a few $100 billion more of cuts or tax revenue enhancements or whatever. It's doable. We're not quite there yet. Again, sustainable does not mean good. Like if I were to overhear my wife talking about my marriage to her girlfriends and she described it as sustainable, that's not good.
It's cute, but yeah, you'll stick around to it though.
I'd want something a little bit better than sustainable. Well, I'm just talking about trying to make the situation sustainable, not necessarily good for the USA.
Look, there's a thought on the other side of the aisle that, on the balance sheet, the United States is rich. It's around $500 trillion, really, in all kind of hard assets, minerals, all that stuff. So we'll be fine. But I'm with you. The compounding effect of all of it over the next, you said 45 years at least for you, for 105, it is it's gonna get to a point where it's gonna get wild. And maybe it's sad. I did not want to hear that. I really thought that maybe one of these days, like by the time I reach 60, there is gonna be a surplus in something.
No, the debt is never going down, Waheed. It's only going to go up. Our only best outcome is controlling the pace at which it goes up. So it goes up slowly relative to GDP.
Are we going to go towards any kind of digital currency adoption here in the United States, switching the dollar out?
I don't think so. I don't think so because there's a lot of concern, especially on the political right, but a little bit on the political left as well, that it would lead to too much government control over what people say and do because, poof, they could just empty your bank account. So
yeah, like what Canada is doing and what China's doing. You can get debanked right away. Yeah.
That's right. And I think the Federal Reserve has said that in order for it to start implementing a digital currency, we would have to pass implementing legislation. And I believe Congress would have to.
Yeah, it's very dysfunctional. There is no way they'll agree to it.
You would need 60 votes. If you pass it through regular order in the Senate, they're not going to have 60 votes to do anything like this.
That's crazy because to me, what I'm looking at the Senate right now, like especially because of all the Doge stuff from what we talked about earlier, and you got the tariffs and you got the NGOs and you got all the money that's being spent there. And then, they come in and they go, we may go digital currency or not. We may use Solana and adopt that or whatever. What was it? XRP, sorry. As part of the technology, they're trying to get off the SWIFT system, the one that they use to try to shut out Russia from the rest of the world, right?
Yeah.
You don't think there is a world where someone else, maybe a JD Vance, could do it and pull it through maybe in 2028 and actually kind of maybe have a little bit of a headway there?
I think it would be hard for him to do or anybody because they won't have the votes in the Senate. We'll see, but I'm skeptical. The one other thing I'd like to add, Waheed, before I depart, is that I'm going to give you a 16 and a half month lead on what I think is going to happen in the election next November. So right now, the Republicans have a narrow majority in the House. I think they're going to lose it. I think it's 85% likely that the Democrats take control of the House. Not a slam dunk, not a layup, at 85%. For the U.S. Senate, I think it's likely that the Republicans hold on to control. Right now, they have 53 seats. I think they'll lose 1 or 2 seats on net, but still end up with a majority in the U.S. Senate. The reason I'm telling you this is because President Trump has about 18 more months or 17 more months to legislate. So he'll be foreign policy president for 4 years. He'll be able to appoint whom he wants to the courts, including should there be a vacancy in the Supreme Court. He'll have 4 years to run roughshod over the executive agencies and departments. But if I'm right, he's only got 2 years to legislate. Starting in January of 2027, every piece of legislation that gets to his desk is going to have to be at least a little bipartisan to get there. He's only got 2 years to legislate.
No, it makes a lot of sense, and we're kind of seeing it right now, to be honest with you. They're already making any kind of, any big thing that they are advertising that we're going to push through, they're making concessions left and right on it. Okay, I'm going to ask you this before we get off, because I would love to have, you're one of my favorite people I talk to, and I want to repeat this over and over and over again. 2028, It's way too early, but do you see a path where the Democrats may have an edge with, like, let's say a Hakeem Jeffries versus a J.D. Vance? Do you think a J.D. Vance advances
There's
into
no
that
way
role?
Hakeem Jeffries is not going to run.
Love it.
He's not going to run.
I mean, he's a kingmaker. I get it. You know, off with the king's head. It makes sense. But you really don't think the power is not going to grab that dude?
No, he's Speaker of the House. He's not going to run. He's already got enough power, especially if a Democrat wins the presidency. He's still Speaker of the House and doesn't have to risk anything, right? So he's not going to, I have a very long list of Democrats who are going to run for president. He's not on it. Neither is Michelle Obama. She will never run for president. She was never going to run for president in 2024. This is a bunch of conspiracy mongers who are.
Everyone wanted Big Mike to run. Yes.
Yeah, and I'm going to leave that alone. And I don't think Bernie Sanders runs either. There is no front runner on the Democratic side, but I'm going to give you two names who I find the most intriguing. Not because they have the best chance. So don't come back for me 2 years and say I said these two people are the best chance. I'm not saying that. Okay. AOC, she might be the only hard left person in this race. And if that's the case, she starts in every primary with about 1/3 of the vote already sewn up. She's going to have a tough time getting to 45 or 50%, which she would need to do to get that nomination. However, if she starts with a 1/3, she can soften her image and maybe make inroads and get in a position where she can get that nomination. The other person is Stephen A. Smith. Yes, I'm talking about the guy from ESPN,
really,
who focuses on basketball, but other sports as well. So here's the deal. All that guy does is talk. He's not shy. He's not going to think about what his advisors are telling him. He's authentic. He can speak extemporaneously and spontaneously on MSNBC and Fox, and he can speak on on CNN.
Oh, I've seen him. That guy can talk for 3 hours on a podcast. Like, I mean, and that's what
Exactly.
you have to be in the future to be a president, you know? So, wow.
So even though he probably won't run, if he does decide to run, he's going to be a much better candidate than a lot of people give him credit for. So on the Republican side, I think it's almost certainly going to be J.D. Vance. Not almost certainly. 65%. If you look at the prediction markets, they're saying 40, 42%. Take the over on J.D. Vance. And I'm going to tell you right now who he's going to pick as his running mate. Little Marco. Marco
Really?
Rubio.
Really?
Marco Rubio.
Really?
Yeah.
Marco
I'm going to
Rubio.
tell you I'm going to tell you 3 years and 2 months in advance of the Republican convention in 2020. He's going to pick Marco. They're personal friends. Marco Rubio would entrench support among Hispanics for Republicans. He's very articulate on both domestic and international affairs. And he has one quality in particular that J.D. Vance absolutely wants in a running mate. He's shorter than J.D. Vance. Okay, Tom Cotton, Glenn Youngkin, those guys are like 6'5".
No, listen,
Okay,
listen. Tom Cotton is happy with the CIA. You know, he's gonna run that one of those days. He's a kingmaker too. He doesn't want off with his head. But yeah, you're right. They're like giants.
They're like giants. Like, there's no way that J.D. Vance wants to be holding the hand of a guy at the Republican National Convention in 1928 up in the air when Youngkin or Tom Cotton are towering over his height. So he will absolutely pick somebody shorter. Hey, Marco Rubio fits the suit.
What's wild is when you think the people running the country should not be making decisions based on these kind of factors, but ultimately they are human and they do it. I'm with you on that one. That is wild. That is wild.
Yes.
Well, Bob, you are a gentleman and a scholar. Enjoyed talking to you, sir. Much appreciated for your time. Tell everybody how they can find you and your company.
So, again, I'm the Deputy Chief Economist with First Trust Advisors. You can look up ftadvisors.com. You can look at the material we publish. A data watch, whenever the data comes out, employment, durable goods, CPI, all that stuff. We also publish something that's very timely, just once a week, a Monday morning outlook. First workday of every week, short and to the point. And here's the key. This is why people love this piece. Is one page and only one page. In fact, it's less than a page because we have a table at the bottom with all the data that's coming out that week. So you can follow how well we do in our forecast. Sometimes we're good, sometimes we're not, But we take something topical in the news that's of interest to investors and analyze it and tell you whether it's a problem or not a problem, or maybe a little bit of a problem. We look at GDP forecasting. We talk about things that are topical. Again, one page and only one page. And here's the best part, Waheed. There's no jargon. Okay, we are not employed at First Trust Advisors to be like academics and look down our nose at people who don't have an advanced degree in economics. No, not at all. Okay, we use normal, everyday language, very approachable, very easy to understand.
Mariana, that's my producer. Please sign us up. I want to go for it. Well, thank you, sir. I really enjoyed our time, and we'll see you again soon, brother.
My pleasure.